Good afternoon, everyone. It's a Saturday, and I had a birthday party last night. Which, happy birthday to Rennie and Todd. Rennie's big 3-0 birthday party. Todd's only 29, but we love him just the same. But went out with a bunch of friends from high school mostly, and had just a fantastic time. But of course, had a good sleep in, and the coffee is much needed. So, but I felt inspired today because actually before I do anything, there are so many of you who have inspired me over the last 48 hours. Because of the love and support and positivity that I have received since posting my first video. And I don't feel scared to get on screen without makeup anymore because it's Saturday afternoon and I'm too lazy to put on makeup because I don't have any obligation until later tonight. So thank you for not making fun of my face. So I want to take a quick second to thank each and every one of you for your support, for your kind words, for your stories. There's no other way to say it. My heart is full. Not one negative comment. Boop, boop. I am blown away by the kindness of everyone so far and embracing me and the beginning of this journey. This video is not an introduction to the next video of my series, if you will. This video was inspired by a message that I received from an individual in regards to my post and a conversation that we had a few days prior. I'm by no means I'm going to go into specifics about this individual and what it's about, but I feel that it is a general message that it's going to be important to get out there. So yes, I'm going to actually just use, I was starting to write the message, and I don't know if you'll be able to figure out who you are, but I am going to write a message to you as well in regards to this post. But I felt that this was something that we all deal with, and that I can turn this into a general conversation about something. So how I got inspired by this person was that she shared a very personal story with me, and I am always so honored when people open up and share their personal stories with me. And so I just hope that this will help that individual as well as other people who may have been struggling with something along the same lines. This is something that I have found, particularly in the older generation, affects so many people. And it's about our upbringing and our environment. When I recorded that first video, the Journey episode 1, yes, I did want it to have a slight Star Wars feel, just so you know. But I discuss my past, my history, my childhood, how I had how I had a fantastic childhood. I didn't have a troublesome childhood at all, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I was in my own kind of little rose-colored world for a lot of my life, which may not have been the safest place externally, But in my little world, everything was just fabulous. um, so then I think about when things started changing and what was the catalyst to those changes beginning. And it kind of comes down to one, I shouldn't say one, it comes down to many things, but one thing that's standing out in my mind today is environment. Our environment that we're raised in, that we work in, that we go to school in, and how environments affect so much about us growing up and developing our own sense of self. I'm going to just adjust this just a scooch because I don't know if that made a difference for any of you. I like you looking at my couch more than I like you looking at my counter with all of my tea and stuff on it. Anywho, environment. Focus in. I was raised as a very free child. Be a kid. Do kid things. You know, learn about strangers and that people are bad. And I personally had a difficult time doing that. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But nowadays, the environment has changed, and kids aren't really allowed to be kids anymore. Everything is so exterior for not everybody, but for a lot of people. I remember having two friends who would run around at recess time and have marker fights and tie rags to themselves, and they were complete individuals and did not care what all of the little other sixth graders or whatever it was were saying about them being completely unique out there. They just did their thing. And whereas I was the type where I was focusing on how people felt about me. Individuality is an amazing thing. When I think about my niece and my nephews and their quirks, my niece in particular, to me, she's not a typical, just a typical 9-year-old girl. She's an individual. She's different. She doesn't necessarily fit the perfect little mold of what I thought a 9-year-old should be, based on what I was when I was a 9-year-old. And it's a very early stage in her life to be developing such a unique personality. In this way, she reminds me a lot of her mother. And one of the things that I admire about my sister so much is her independence, is her individuality. She is who she is. And she does not waver from that because of what other people say. Don't get me wrong, we all do that to a certain extent. Especially when we're around certain people. We've all had that friend who is one person when they're with just you, and then a totally different person when they're with a group of people. And that's part of growing up, because as we're growing up, we just want to fit in, right? We just want to have friends. We don't want to be alone in this journey called life. So we mold ourselves into beings that are easy to get along, or easier to get along with. When I say this, I don't mean everybody. Everybody's different. This was my personal experience, and as somebody who doesn't have her own children, except my cat, my fur child, that doesn't have her own human children, I can't even really begin to understand what kids have to go. Well, it's not that I can't begin to understand, but I have a difficult time understanding what kids have to go through nowadays. Excuse me, because I'm not a kid nowadays. I remember what it was to be a kid when I was a kid. to an extent. But it's very different nowadays, and kids are maturing so much faster than they used to. And the cause of that is our environment. So we grow up and we start out as tiny humans who eat dirt and do what they want, and we rebel against our parents, and we rebel against, the man who is our parents when we're young. We're finding our identity, we're finding who we are, we're learning our quirks, we're discovering our emotional selves. We're discovering. I mean, once I feel that we discover more of our physical selves when we get into the later stages in the teenage years in life. But we're this little ball of innocence. And so we do what we want. Even though sometimes mom and dad don't necessarily agree with it, and we'll fight tooth and nail just to keep that individuality. But no, you shouldn't suck up puddles of water in a water gun and shoot it at the neighbors. At the same time, we do have to learn common courtesy. So we can't completely maintain that individuality, because then it becomes socially unacceptable. If that kind of makes sense. So somewhere along the line, and it starts small. It starts small with those, those little moments of mom and dad telling us, no, you can't shoot puddle water at the neighbor kids when it's only +5 degrees in March. Like, right? We do have to learn those things. And those so slightly cut off our individuality. Because we do, as human beings, we have to follow a certain train track through life, so that we don't get thrown in jail in the long run, right? There's law and there's order, and if you want to continue to live a independent life, there is that track that you do have to follow. Nowadays, that track is, to me, getting so wide. Like, you can't. When I was in 8th grade, I want to say, I was still wearing boys' clothes. I wore basketball shirts and boys' jeans. And once I started developing lady bits, I wore things. I wore a sports bra because it wasn't about, at that age, it wasn't about my sexuality. It was about, I wore things that reflected what I liked. I liked basketball. I liked comfort. So that's how I put myself out into the world. And certainly it wasn't until I was probably 14 or 15 years old that I started. My biggest fear when it came to my appearance was I didn't want to wear sweatpants because I was terrified of getting pantsed in school. I was terrified. Probably would have worn overalls for the rest of my life. Or probably should have. I have never been pantsed, so I don't know what I was so concerned about. But kids aren't always nice. So, and now I look at kids at 14 years old going to school in girls in, skirts and high heels, and I mean, we couldn't even wear a spaghetti strap, tank top. And I'd like to say that that's part of women being individuals, but I don't believe that it is. I believe it's young girls being what they think they need to be, and that is sexual. And when you're 14, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 plus, that's not what you need to be, is sexual. So I'm kind of getting off topic and ranting about kids today. Can you tell I turned 30 in May? Because kids today and their slutty clothes. I'm sorry about all that. So I'm gonna just read this message a little bit because I gotta get refocused in on on what I'm actually here to give you a message about. So as we start as an individual, we start as an independent, dependent on our parents, but when it comes to our world, we're completely dependent on ourselves. And we start as what we want to be, right? Because we come into this world as a new seed that doesn't have an identity. And as we grow up, we develop the identity, right? And maybe we grow up into a rose and we're stunningly beautiful, but we have thorns. Or maybe we grow up into a daisy that is just there to make people, to be pretty, have bees feed off of them and, whatever. Or, anyway, I'm not going to sit here all day and just do plant analogies, but I think you get the point. So we start as a very similar thing, a seed. And then we get to kind of learn and grow into what we want to be, or what our environment causes us to be. And somewhere along the line, we are taught that, at least to some extent, our individuality is not okay. That you need to fit into the mold. That you need to fit, you need to be a rose in a rose bush, not a daisy in a rose bush, right? You need to conform. And this isn't, and nowadays, conforming manifests itself in a different way than it did when I was 14 years old. And when I was 14 years old, it was manifesting itself in a very different way than when my mom was 14 years old. And then when my mom was 14 years old, it was manifesting itself very differently than how her mom was when she was 14 years old. And I think you're getting the point at what I'm getting at here, is that we are so very different. I am so very different from my grandmother. But my grandmother taught my mother what she thought was best on how to be and how to act, and my mother taught me what she thought was best on how to be, and how to act, so that I could fit in. But what I learned from my mom is very different than what she learned from her mom. And so it's sort of an evolution. But there's no way to deny that parts of what I have learned to be, or who I should be, is learned from that passing of my grandmother. So I definitely have bits of my grandmother in me. I have a lot of my mom in me, and I have bits of my grandma in me, and when it comes to some other stuff, I have some of my great grandma in me as well that I know I can name. So, but the point is that we are evolving, we are changing, but we still have bits, or a lot of our gene pool within us. And that's part of our environment. That's part of our upbringing. Those are things that from a very young age have been, I don't want to say pounded into us. It sounds like a very negative term, and I don't mean it that way. But when you're told something over and over and over again, if somebody were to sit there every day and tell you the sky is purple, 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 eventually you're going to start just agreeing, whether it's just to shut them up or not, that the sky, or you may agree that the sky is purple. Because we lose, because people can manipulate our brain into thinking things. Now, the sky is purple is an extreme example, but I guess a more realistic example is the notion that as a woman you need to find a man to take care of you, and then you settle down and you have babies and you stay at home and cook and clean and do that for your partner. That is a fantastic, like, if that's what you want, that's fantastic. Be that person. Own it. Do it. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, do it, because that's what you want, and you deserve to do what you want. Right? And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to, the message I'm kind of trying to pass on is that we, yes, are trained that we need to be certain things in our lives, because we've been taught by our parents, and they've been taught by their parents, and they've been taught by their parents. But then there's also the fact of, we try to become what we think our environment, our social environment needs us to be. So, as I mentioned, I used to feel that I needed to be the athletic girl and the pretty girl and the religious girl. I needed to be all of these things, because that's what not my family was telling me I needed to be necessarily, but that my environment was telling me, my school friends and all of that's what I needed to be. And so there is just chain after chain after chain of other people telling us what we need to be. And the fact is, in my world, I just want to be me. I just want to do things for me. I still have days where I look outside the window and it's raining and I just want to go jump in some puddles because I want to be a little kid, but I'm nearly 30 years old, so people are going to be like, oh, what is a 30-year-old woman doing jumping in puddles? That's not right? Right? Like, who cares? I'm not hurting anybody by going outside and jumping in a puddle and just being in touch with my inner child. We so, as adults, ignore our inner child, and you darn well better believe that it's still there. You haven't lost that inner child. That inner child does not go away no matter how much we suppress it. But we're taught that we need to fit in the mold of what everybody else thinks we need to be. One of the biggest steps, not the first, but one of the biggest steps and the most effective steps that I took to my personal healing was just learning to do things for me. To be me. I like playing basketball, so I'm going to continue to play basketball. Even though, I might not be as good as I was, once upon a time, but I enjoy it and I love doing it. So just because I'm not as good as I once was doesn't mean I should discontinue doing it, right? If I want to jump in puddles, as long as I'm not splashing other humans, I don't see what the problem is, yet people are going to look at me and think that I am an odd duck. Guess what, world? In your world, I am an odd duck. But in my world, I'm just embracing who I am. Because who we are as individuals is the most beautiful thing, or should be the most beautiful thing in our world. So much of my anxiety came from worrying about what people thought about me. So much of my actions, from particularly, as I mentioned, age 16 on, were completely devoted to making people like me and thinking that everybody needs to like me. And just, it was a massive revelation for me when I learned that who I am is not wrong. What I do is not wrong. And people may not always like the choices that I make for myself, but I am not you. My journey is not your journey. So why are you wasting the energy to send me negative vibes, negative messages, negative comments, whatever it is, to tell me that I don't fit your mold? Because I am not your life. I am not your journey. You are your life, and you are your journey. And so you need to do what you need to do to make you happy. And the only time that that's wrong is when it affects other people. When you put your energy, your negative energy in particular, into other people's lives. Because it's not your life. And that's one of the hardest things, particularly in the relationships closest to us. Your mom, your dad, your companion, partner, family, close friends, right? You don't want to hurt anybody around you. Okay, some people do want to hurt people around them, but you shouldn't want to hurt, in my opinion. You shouldn't want to hurt the people around you. And so in turn, we have internalized everything and started hating ourselves because we are not what Felicia wants us to be. We are not what Marvin wants us to be. It took me a long time to give the big old F you to people who want to change me. Because who the hell are you to know what's best for me? And I mean, I can't sit here and say I haven't said some things to a person a time or two in hopes that I would be positively influencing them and maybe stepped over a line. In my pursuit of their happiness, I'm not the type of person, I try not to just spread hate. I try not to spread hate. And nobody's perfect. We all have those moments of gossip. We all have those moments of giving that little stank eye to somebody who rubs you the wrong way. You know, we're all guilty of that, and that's okay. Because we don't have to like everything that everybody does. You don't have to like everything that everybody does. And we have every right to tastefully let people know when they've pissed us off. And so I guess the message that I'm trying to get across is that nobody can tell you what you should be. I started school a few weeks ago. I'm training now to be an esthetician. When I thought about becoming an esthetician, when I first wanted to do it, I've always loved makeup. And so I wanted to do makeup since I was a teenager, and I stayed at home and I practiced my own makeup, and I've done my friends' makeup sometimes, and I've always loved makeup, and it's something that brought me joy. And out of high school, you know, I swung a hammer, and I've had a number of jobs along the way that I've gained a ton of experience from, but ultimately they were not something that I got into because I wanted to do them. They paid the bills. That's it, right? So when I thought about aesthetic school and wanting to be an esthetician or be a makeup artist or whatever, now it's all drawn me, and it used to be a makeup artist that I wanted to be. To me, it wasn't based on what other people had said. I didn't do it because it wasn't a job. It was a job. It wasn't a career. There was no future in it. You can't just do nails for a living. That's what 18-year-old girls do right out of high school, right? Not 30-year-old women. Or even like, I denied myself something that I wanted so bad because I felt society didn't view it as a serious career. So now here I am, 10 plus years later, finally taking a chance on me and what I want, and I have zero doubt in my mind that I can be a success at it, to whatever degree of success I want from it, because I'm going to do it with passion, because now I'm living passion. I put aside the thoughts of the daily grind and the 9 to 5 and, you know, needing to make so much money per year and owning a home and having babies and all of this stuff. I've put all of that aside because that's not what I want for myself right now. Maybe one day. I'm not saying that's never going to happen, that none of that's ever going to happen, but right now, I want to be an esthetician. I said it. I want to be an esthetician. And maybe that's not, if I had a boyfriend, maybe that's not what he would want for me. Don't care. Maybe that's not what my family wants for me. I do care. They're totally on board. Don't get me wrong. But let's just say my family wasn't on board. I love my family. I respect my family greatly. And everything that they tell me, every piece of advice, whether they ease me into it or flat out tell me, advice, take it, or you're dumb. I always take it into consideration, but now they don't, family doesn't, Joe Blow doesn't, boyfriend doesn't, random person on the street, they don't determine, and they don't get to determine what I do with my life, because I am responsible for my happiness. I am in control of my happiness, because I am the only one who was allowed to be in control of my happiness. Control your happiness. Do what you need to do for you to be happy. Because nobody else is going to do it. I hate to say it. Of course, there's people who come into our lives who only want to cause us positivity. There's also people who come into our lives who only want to shit on our parades. But a lot of the time, most people who come into our lives want to positively impact our life. But we forget that we need to positively impact our life because we're too busy trying to positively impact everybody else's life. This has turned into a rant. But I just feel like it's a very important message. Do what's right for you. I know marriage. I don't know. I don't know marriage. But when you marry somebody, you bring them into your heart. You bring them into your family. You bring them into your energy, right? And you value that. You clearly value that person to a certain extent on some level because you've allowed them into your bubble. The bubble that is your life. But that doesn't mean that what they want for themselves is what you want for yourself, right? And you need to stand up for what's important to you and not just bend over and rubber arm it for everybody else, and then you allow yourself to just rot away in numbness because what you want isn't important. What you want is the most important thing in your world. End of story. I'm sorry. What I want is the most important thing in my world. I don't always act on it. You know, I still want to have friends, so I don't just, say my best friend of 22 years, like, yeah, we're only ever eating at this restaurant ever again. My friend would be like, okay, have fun. I'm going to go do my thing then, right? Like, obviously there is social acceptances if that's the life that you want to live. If you want to be shut in and live by yourself and never see anything but your cats and your home-based business ever again, fantastic. There is nothing wrong with that because that's what you want, and what you want is important. I'm hoping I'm getting my point across here because now I feel like I've been rambling on for 34 minutes trying to get a point across that I don't even know if it'll work. But I have deemed this an important message in my life, and this might be an important message in your life. It might be an important message in somebody in your life that you know. You might think this is total garbage, and you are absolutely 100% right if that is your truth. So I guess I just want to say to people, live your truth, be who you want to be, and don't let outside influences influence what you really want in life. You don't have to have a boyfriend. You don't have to get married. You don't have to have children. You don't have to do your hair every day. You don't even have to, you don't even have to shower every week if you don't want. I would highly recommend it, but you don't have to do it. What you do have to do is eat food, drink water, go to the washroom. Obviously, it's recommended you leave your house. But you don't have to do anything you don't want. And I just ask that everybody keeps that in mind. Just because somebody else wants something for you, or typically for them, doesn't mean you have to just bend over and accept it. One of my videos I do, that made me think of one of my videos where I do touch on rape culture a little bit, so I guess that's something that's to come, because you'll get to hear me rant on that a little bit more. But for today, this rant, or bit of advice, or whatever you want to take it as, complete poppycock, I don't know, whatever you feel it is, take that and own it. Just own it. And I will stop talking and let you get back to your day. Because I feel it's important that you enjoy your day. And it's Saturday, and I get to go to the Rush game tonight, so I'm super jacked about that. I think I do anyway. I better call my dad, my parents, and find out what the plan is. But anyway, I think I was going to make my new motto something along the lines of smile bright and spread light, or share light. Smile bright, share light. Because that is words that I am starting to live by. The brighter that we shine, the more people we bring into our sunshine, and then they can amplify their sunshine, and positive vibes on positive vibes equals more positive vibes. It doesn't equal negative vibes. So keep the positive vibe wave going. And everybody have a fabulous rest of your weekend, and thank you so ever much for listening and sharing to what I have to say. I hope that it brings peace to at least one person. So have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.